What's up everyone, this is Trinikill Toys, and I'm back with another review. This time I'm taking a look at the Power Rangers Lightning Collection Black Dino Ranger, or the Brachiosaurus Ranger from Power Rangers Dino Thunder. And of course, if you don't know, this is Tommy Oliver, and you see the rest of the Power Rangers from the Lightning Collection. These are also Tommy Oliver. Power Rangers was a pretty big part of my childhood, probably one of the main pillars of my childhood. And obviously my favorite is Tommy Oliver, who was different Rangers throughout the entire series. He also made various returns throughout the series, even up until some of the newer ones. And if you didn't know, the actor who played Tommy Oliver, Jason David Frank, he apparently committed suicide. I'm not going to get into that. R.I.P. JDF. But I'm here to talk about figures. So I'm just going to get right into it, and you guys know how this goes. I'm going to take a look at the sculpt, the detail, the articulation, then the accessories, and then some size comparisons and head swaps, and then my final thoughts. So first off, the way the figure looks is really awesome. I really like how they did the shoulder pads. They engineered it very well. We'll get into that in the articulation. The helmet came out really good, and also the paint on the figure, on the front, on the arms, and on the legs. I don't like that they had the pins black, but when you have a pin that's a certain color, it's going to be the same color on both sides. So they can't do, multicolored pins. But I thought they were going to do pinless stuff moving forward. Like pretty recently they've been doing pinless stuff, and I think even some figures before this figure came out was pinless. So I don't know what's up with that. They're kind of going back and forth. That's kind of the whole thing with Lightning Collection. Of course, it's Hasbro. Hasbro has a lot of different lines and brands that they're dealing with, and you get mixed results basically on all of the different lines that they're in charge of. So it's kind of unfortunate that there's a huge lack of consistency within Hasbro. That's kind of how it goes though with some of these big corporations. Nonetheless, the figure has a nice even layer of gold paint, so there's no black poking through any of the gold paint, so that's really nice. And the silver on the belt also came out really good. But one huge mistake is that they didn't paint the morpher on his wrist. They could have just put in a few gold details like it shows up in the show. I don't know why they didn't just do that. Again, Hasbro doing what Hasbro does. But I do appreciate what they did on the helmet. They have the gold trim on the visor, which came out really good. And they also have the red and the purple eyes on the helmet. They could have easily skipped out on that. They didn't, so I'm really glad they included that. I'm just bummed out they didn't paint the morpher. Maybe I could go back with some gold paint and touch that up. Then I'll briefly talk about the sculpt on the additional head he comes with, which is supposed to be Professor Oliver. In the show, if you remember, he was a teacher at the high school that the Rangers were a part of, and it's not good. This is pretty bad sculpt. That's pretty much what everyone expects from Lightning Collection. Like I said, there's no consistency among any of the Hasbro lines. I think Lightning Collection is probably one of the worst. They have very bad QC. Like when it's bad, it's bad. I mentioned it before in a previous video, and I'll get to that later. The White Ninja Ranger had very terrible QC. And again, the sculpt is not there. It does not look like Tommy Oliver, which is unfortunate. And these figures are like 25 bucks. There's figures that are 20 bucks, 25 bucks that have much better sculpt. So they definitely can improve. And in the past, Hasbro has done some pretty good sculpts, some pretty decent sculpting on figures and head sculpts, things like that. So they can do it. They just choose not to. Or the different teams that are working for the different lines choose not to for some reason. I don't know if it's cutting costs. They don't want to put in the effort and the time into it. Regardless of that, the figures do suffer because of that inconsistency anyway. So getting into the figure, the articulation, the head looks up that much. The sculpt of the helmet is going to run into the back, and then you can look down that far. Pretty good for a helmeted character. And then there is a little bit of tilt, so that's pretty good. You can get some emotion. That's always good for helmeted characters, so that's cool. Of course, it swivels all around. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that the helmet looks kind of big, especially for the body. It makes the body look kind of small. In the show, didn't really look like that. If they would have scaled the helmet down a little bit, it would have made a pretty big difference in my opinion. And now, like I mentioned, the shoulder pads before, I really appreciate the way they engineered it. It's tabbed into the upper torso and around the shoulder area, not on the actual shoulder joint itself. And it's also not like the way Marvel Legends does it, where they combine it with the butterfly joint. It's just sitting right above that on the upper torso sculpt. It does get out of the way when you're articulating the arm. It is very soft, but that could lead to breakage, so you guys got to be careful with that. But the butterfly joints do give a lot more range this time. Sometimes they're kind of limited, sometimes it's good, but this time they did a pretty good job. You get more back than forward, and that's because of the way they sculpted the chest. And then you also get the shoulder rotation, which I just showed you, and then it goes out, goes up about that far. Bicep swivel, and the double jointed elbows gets good range, and you have the swivel and the hinge on the wrist and the upper torso. This is kind of the highlight of Lightning Collection figures. This is what makes them so good, is you get the upper torso articulation, which is kind of hindered on this figure. You can definitely take it apart, cut up some plastic, and you're able to get a lot more range with that. Without modding it, that's the amount of range you get out of the upper torso articulation. And then moving forward, you get about that much, not a whole lot. And then you have the hinge on the bottom, which gets you a lot more, and then a lot more going forward. And then both of them combined gets you pretty far back and then pretty far forward. So the upper torso joint doesn't really add that much. And again, they've engineered it better. I think some of these figures in the back are engineered a little bit better. And this also does swivel. It does tilt side to side. And the legs, they go about that far, which is pretty disappointing. There's no drop down hips or anything. That's really disappointing for a character, especially for a Power Rangers character. They should be able to kick way higher and just move more fluid. And also, that's as far as it's going to kick out. Swivel works as you'd expect. Double knees, same thing. Does have a boot swivel, which is a little loose, but not too bad. And then hinge and pivot on the ankle. Overall, the articulation is what we've come to expect from Lightning Collection. It's good, but it's hindered in some areas. Now, moving on to the accessories, he does come with another grip hand for his right hand, and then a fist for his left hand. Then he has an open posing hand for his right hand, and then a grip hand for his left for gripping his brachio staff or brachio saber. I don't remember what it was called. But it's this thing. You know, it's reminiscent of Saba that came with the White Ranger, because you have the handle, then you have the head. I don't remember if this talked in the show. The silver and gold paint is applied pretty well, and I'm pretty surprised that there's no really bad paint mistakes like there have been previously, especially with this figure. This figure was really horrible, and I was looking forward to this figure, but that figure was just really bad. So accessories are pretty good, and I'll show you what he looks like with his alternate head. So that's what he looks like there. Again, the likeness is just not, it's not good. It's not a good likeness. It does not look like Tommy Oliver, doesn't look like Jason David Frank. And the same goes for pretty much all the other head sculpts that they've done for him. And now we'll get into the comparisons, but here's the head that came with the Green Ranger. I thought this one wasn't too bad. It's not great, but I think it's a lot better than this one. And here's the head that came with the Zeo Red Ranger. This one is pretty bad. The other head that came with the White Ninja Ranger. So this one is pretty cool, but like I said, that figure is horrible, so it doesn't even matter. And here's another alternate head that same figure came with, and this one's the worst one. You can see the white paint on his face, some of the black scuffs on his face. So that's really bad. Like that QC on that figure was really bad, and I think that whole wave of Ninja Ranger figures, I think that had the worst QC problems out of all of the waves from Lightning Collection. High comparisons with some of the other figures. I'm only collecting Tommy Oliver, and I think I have all of them, or at least all the ones that I want. And with this Black Ranger, I have completed my Tommy Oliver collection, so that's all I'm buying from Power Rangers, unless they make a movie version, the 1995 movie, unless they make a figure of the movie suits. Other than that, I'm pretty much done with Power Rangers. There's what he looks like next to the Green Ranger, a little bit taller because of this fin on top of the helmet. Then next to Red Zeo Ranger, same thing. And the next two, my favorite, the White Ranger. Now, one thing that is really unfortunate with this figure is that the white is kind of degrading, the white plastic. If it was white paint, it would have been a lot different, but because it's made in that white plastic, the white plastic gets stained very easily. And I think out of the package it was already kind of messed up, but now it's just getting worse over time. This is the first one I bought, by the way. And yeah, it's just been getting worse over time. You can see the whites don't match between the torso here and the legs. And in person it looks a lot worse. It's not really showing up on camera, but there's like brown stains and like specks and dots all over his legs. So that really sucks that that's happening with that figure. That's my favorite one. And same thing with this one. The white is starting to get messed up. Well, this figure was all kinds of messed up out of the box. And also his freaking head broke, and I had to put tack in there. Not only that, he came with two left feet, or two right feet, two of the same feet. And yeah, this figure just poses horribly, feels really cheap compared to the other ones. And yeah, this one just sucks. Here he is next to Black Series Captain Rex. And these two lines, Lightning Collection and Black Series, are really in scale. Lightning Collection is not really in scale with Marvel Legends. Marvel Legends is going to be a bit bigger. Here he is next to Bolivar's Desert Rat, and you can see this is more in the Marvel Legends scale, and he's a little bit bigger than the Black Ranger. And Masterverse Skeletor, of course, he's 7-inch, and he makes the Black Ranger look really puny. Here he is next to Captain America. So again, Captain America is bigger. Now, last thing I want to do is show you some head swaps that you can do with the alternate head. So, like I mentioned, if you're familiar with the show, Tommy Oliver was a teacher or archaeologist or whatever on the Dino Thunder show. So here's some options so you can get a Professor Oliver. So here's the Professor Oliver head on the really old Tony Stark Marvel Legends suited body. And this is a really bad suited body, but this doesn't look too bad, honestly. I actually like the way this looks. It's not 100% accurate to what he wore in the show when he was a professor, but I think it does work pretty well. And here it is on a Voliverse body. The skin tones don't match. He's really pale for some reason, but this is just in case you want to see what he looks like on this body, just so you can have just like a regular army guy or something. Here he is on the Marvel Legends chamber body. So that doesn't look too bad. And last one, and my favorite, is on the black suited body. This is from the Marvel Legends Obadiah Stane figure, and this looks the best. I'm probably going to have it displayed like this next to the Black Ranger. So final thoughts. I think the figure is really good, actually. You can easily get these kinds of poses where he's on one foot kicking in the air. So that's pretty cool. A lot of options for taking pictures and stuff like that. And you can just get him into some really cool poses. The articulation in the torso area could have been a lot better, and also in the leg area. But it is nice to finally finish my Tommy Oliver collection. And like I mentioned in the beginning, Power Rangers, and I guess specifically Tommy Oliver, is kind of a pillar of my childhood. One of the many important characters in my childhood. So it's nice to finally have all the Tommy Oliver Rangers together. And for the most part, all the figures are good, except this one. But having all these figures together like this looks pretty sick. Anyway, that's all I got for this figure. Let me know what you think about this review. Let me know what you think about this figure. Anyway, guys, that's all I got to say. See you in the next one.